Let's just take a look at how we can change the template of something simple like a button. So when we look at a piece of UI, and I've just got a starting of a project here in Visual Studio, if I open up my XAML file, I've got a button, and by default the button just knows how to display itself this way. So it has a little rounded rectangle, it has some content in the middle of it, there's a bit of a sort of gradient and a shadowy thing going on here. So we have this built-in look and feel for a button. If you were to use something like .NET Reflector on the assembly from which the button comes, you'd be able to find this built-in style as to how the button displays itself. Now there are many cases where you want a control like a button or a radio button or a list box or whatever it might be to display itself in a completely different way. And one of the powers of Silverlight as a platform is it has that sort of idea of a lookless control, a control where you can completely replace the UI if you want to. Now by far the easiest way of doing this is to use Expression Blend. So let's go ahead and open this very same project in Expression Blend. Let's pop up Blend. Here's Blend 2.5 and it's the June preview for working with Silverlight 2 Beta 2, and I'm just going to open that very same project in here, and it's this one here called Templating. Let's just open that up inside of Expression Blend. It'll show me the Silverlight project, which is up here, and it will show me the web project, which is down there. And what I can do is straight away open up this XAML file and I can find the button that we've been looking at. There's my button. Let me just get a little bit more space on the screen here and just resize this a little. And so we can see that we have a button, and a button has a template. And the way we can get to that template is by right mousing on the button and saying edit control parts, and we have a choice. We can either edit a copy of this template or create an empty template. Now a copy is probably a good way to start, so let's edit a copy. We can call this what we want. Let's call this my button style, something like that. It says where would you like to define this, at the application level or at this document level. So we'll go for this document level and let's click OK. And so what we get now is a copy of that template, and what this allows us to see sort of what it means to be a button. So visually we can see that being a button means that we have a grid, and within that grid there's a background rectangle, there's a rectangle for a background gradient, there's another grid displaying some curved bevel. You can see that's providing that nice shade at the top. Let me just see if I can scale this down a little bit to fit it on the screen. We have an accent. There's a focus visual, there's a downstroke in there. The content presenter, which actually presents the words click here in this case, or any content that you want to put into a button. And then a rectangle for the disabled state. And then over here what we have are the states of the control. So we have the base state, we have its normal state, we have its mouse over state. Notice there's a slight difference between normal and mouse over. We have the pressed state and the disabled state. And so what these states are doing is running animations, some of them with short durations like 0.2 of a second, 0.1 of a second, and some of them really without any animation duration. They just instantly set properties to control the various states that this button flows between. And so just as a very simple example, let's just say that when you mouse over the button, we'll take this accent rectangle and we'll change its stroke here. Let's do it pretty much immediately. We'll change the stroke thickness to be 10 rather than 1, which is going to make that a lot bigger. We get a little visual highlight to indicate what it is that's changing as part of this mouse over state as a difference from the base state. So we can see this is mouse over, this is base. Let's save this. Let's go back to Visual Studio. Let's press F5 in Visual Studio. Spin up the application, just see if that has made a difference to what we're seeing. So as we mouse in, you can see that 0.2 second of an animation just to give that big white rectangle around this. And we've changed this default control template just to make that slight difference as we go in and out. Of course we could go back to Expression Blend and we could start to change other states. But times when you might not want to start from the base template, you might want to start from scratch. So let's go back up to the main UI. Let's go back to our layout up here, and we'll take our button, and rather using this template, let's go and create a new template that's empty. We'll call this one my empty template. We'll store it at the document level again and press OK. And now if you look at what we have on the screen, you'll see that the button is not really containing any content at all. All we have is a grid. And it's really up to us to put whatever we like inside of that grid. So for instance, if we want a largely elliptical button, then let's go and drag an ellipse into here. So let's just go, and drag an ellipse. We'll just double click that and pop an ellipse into this. Let's get it to size itself nicely so that it takes the area of the button in a reasonable way. And then maybe what we might want is to ensure that the content of the button still displays. So what that would mean is taking the grid and adding a content presenter. So let's grab the content presenter. We'll just add that into the grid, and we'll make sure that this centers itself so that it's there, and we can see the content of the button is coming through. Let's take this ellipse and give it some kind of fill. So we'll take it and give it a radial gradient. We'll make that start. Let's have a sort of green based gradient here, and we'll make it start with something quite dark, and then we'll just make it go out to something a bit lighter. It's not going to look very pretty, but you get the idea. And then we can start to work on our various states again, such that when the mouse is over the button, maybe what we might do is just go ahead and take the stroke of the ellipse, and we might make that, I don't know, some other kind of green over here. Let's make it that kind of green, and let's move it to 4 pixels wide so that we can see that. So whenever the mouse is over, that's going to happen. Let's take this over a 0.1 second interval. When the mouse presses the button, what we might do is just play around with the gradient or something like that. So we might take that fill, we might make this color lighter, and we might make this color darker, just so that we can see something there. Let's grab that and sort of invert the button. So we can see as we go now from base to pressed, we get an inversion. And I'll leave disabled and normal and focused and unfocused as well. So now we have a circular button. Let's save this. Let's go back over to Visual Studio. Let's let Visual Studio load that up, and we can press F5 in Visual Studio. And now we've completely replaced the template of that button that we were using, and we get a sort of circular button. As we mouse into it, you see that highlight to indicate that the mouse is over. When we click on it, we get that inversion. It looks a bit like we clicked a button. It looks a bit strange. But you get the idea. The idea here is not to design a beautiful looking button. It's just to show you how you can replace these template parts, and how specifically Expression Blend is letting you see these states. Really useful and really simple way of being able to build up the templates that you need for controls like buttons and so on. We started simple here with button because it's a simple control to take a look at.